Hey everybody, good afternoon. Welcome to this Saturday afternoon sales show pre-San Diego Comic-Con. We've got a good one on tap for you. It's Hilary Barta, who I'd like to say is the first time person on the show, but he actually was on a Comic Art Live panel a few years back that I didn't host. But so this will be my first time getting to chat with him. But before we got started, Jeff Wedding just beat me to my little announcement. He has wished our CEO Kazra Gambari happy birthday. So for those of you who are friends with Kazra on Facebook, be sure to leave him a little happy birthday message. And yeah, because all of his friends are doing that over there. He wants, so the little extra love and support for his big momentous day is would be appreciated. See, Stingray knows what to do. All caps, happy birthday to Kazra. So let's get on with this. I'm really looking forward to talking with her. We've had a few phone calls in advance of the show, trying to go through some of the art, and I've had a great time talking with him already. So getting him on screen is going to be fun. Hey, Hilary.
Hello, Bill. Hello, everyone.
Yeah. Well, it's that was actually going to be one of my questions, so we might as well get that out of the way. Everybody's looking at your name, Hilary Barta, aka Surly Hack. What's up with Surly Hack? Because I know that some of the pieces that we have here for sale today are signed Surly.
Well, it's a joke, like a lot of the things I do. It's intended to be funny, but it's like a joke that never went away. Back when Doug Writson and I did Stupid at Image Comics, I noticed that the other guys that created Image that started the company, they all had studio names. There was Homage, there was Top Cow, there was Extreme, and I thought, what would be the dumbest name for a comic studio? And I thought Surly Hack, like the old cranky artist from the 1940s was bitter about the industry. And so I just, it was a Surly Hack comic production. And it was just something that was a one-off thing I did. And then I just started using the name kind of the way someone like Graham Ingalls would do, Ghastly for his EC work. And I think I first used it on a cover that was an EC style cover. And maybe I was thinking of Ingalls, but it was a cover for Fear Agent, and sort of a kind of Fear Agent looking like Tom Strong. It was Fear Agent's costume, but he had the giant torso as a throwback to the Wally Wood, mad Superman body. Anyway, long story short, I signed it Surly, and the people at Dark Horse said, "Are you sure you don't want to put your name on here, Hilary?" I said, no, that's okay. As long as I'm credited inside, it's all right. And then I just started using it on my later drawings, and it's become kind of a thing. Yeah.
So you were kind of like predicting that in the future you would be a Surly Hack and have an edge to your time in the hobby, or in the business, I should say. You're not in the hobby. You're on the other side of the table.
Well, but I'm sure there are plenty of people that will say I am a Surly Hack, though. A number of people say, Hilary, he's really not surly. He calls himself that, but he's not. But I have my moments for sure. Yeah.
Well, I saw in the Grand Comics database, I was looking through kind of, your list of comic credits earlier today, and they actually have you down as AKA Surly Hack, or AKA Surly. Yes, they what else did they have? I think they even had you down just as Barta sometimes. Yeah, Barta, Surly Hack. I mean, I guess there's been different ways you've been credited in comics over the years, and they've got 9 different ways that they feel your name has been written in
nine different. Well, maybe that's misspellings. I remember once I did.
There is one that says Bart, like they left the A off.
I did a pin-up for someone, and I won't name names here. And his wife was doing production on his book, and so they put the pin-up in the back, and then she was doing the production. She then, under my drawing, wrote my name saying, credit, Hilary Barta, but she misspelled my name, and it's like right below my signature, which oddly enough I spelled correctly.
Well, is your signature neat? I mean,
is it neat? Oh, it's not like Walt Simonson's or something that you can't really read it. No, it's just Barta, or Barta, and I guess they misspelled my last name. And now sometimes it's Surly. So
All right. Well, now that's because I didn't ask you that, and all the times we were talking, I was wondering what the whole Surly thing was. So,
Secret now revealed. Yes.
I was looking through other things too. I mean, I know you have an affinity for the EC artists and the books. I mean, that one Simpsons, cartoon that or strip that you did. Just had that wonderful EC intro feel to it. And do you feel like those creators in some way influence your work a little bit? Because I know you're a fan of Wally Wood too, so I'll let you take it from there.
Well, without a doubt, Wood is a favorite artist. My best friend back in high school, Wally Wood was his favorite artist, and he bought every comic that Wood ever inked or penciled. And he also had some art. And I really think that I loved Wood at that point because he's always been great. As soon as I discovered him, I loved his work. But I really got to know Wood's work through my friend. And he just, I just saw everything. I saw the Superboys that he inked and so many comics. And I just spent more time with Wally Wood because of that friendship probably than I ever would have. And so even if it would have happened later, at that point, post high school in my 20s, I really got sucked into it, but I just love, my favorite thing at EC is Mad because I love the humor. And so to some extent, my favorite Wood work is the work he did with Kurtzman, where Kurtzman did the layouts. But I also love Wood's work beyond that and just his drawing. It didn't quite have that narrative, really inventive structure that Kurtzman had, but it was so beautiful. I mean, his art is it just pulls you into the panels. You feel like you can step and walk into those worlds. The three-dimensionality of it really appeals to me.
So humor has always been kind of an angle to your artwork and the way you've approached the business and the medium. I mean, it seems like that those are some of the titles that people kind of that some of the editors maybe aligned you with. But going into it, I mean, as a fan of Mad and those creators, did that kind of influence the direction that you wanted to take your career if you had the ability to navigate it and direct it yourself?
Well, when I started, I was just looking for work, and I wasn't really doing a lot of comics back then. And I showed my work to Al how I got into comics professionally beyond working locally in fanzines and small self-published things. I was at one of the great things about the Chicago Comic Con, as it was then called, was they allowed almost any artist, fan artist, guys who did mini comics, to come and have a spot. And eventually, when they had the big halls out by, O'Hare, you could have a table. As guys would come in, literally friends I knew that just did mini comics when they were in high school could come to Chicago, and they would give them a free table because we were, to the owners of the show, we were the draw. This was before the movie stars and all of that stuff that kind of pulled the focus away from the artists and the comics themselves. And it was a wonderful show. And I was there as a fan artist for a number of years. And then eventually I had more illustrations than comics in the portfolio, showed them to Al Milgrom, who was a Marvel editor then. He was sitting at a table, and I said, "Would you mind looking at my portfolio?" And he said, "Well, there isn't much in the way of comics here, Hilary, but your inking is good. Would you want work as an inker?" And of course I said yes. And that's how I got my first 2 pages at Marvel, inking the Defenders. And that led in about a year or so to more regular work. It took a while because I wasn't very good, more intimidated than good, I think. I was just scared of inking over pencils. I hadn't really done it. And I think it took a while for me to loosen up. But
was that Perlin?
I don't remember the question. I start talking and
well, no, I guess the humor angle. So before you got your first gig with Milgram, thanks to Milgram and the Defenders pages, I mean, was humor a part of the work that you were doing? Because clearly, whatever you showed Al Milgram wasn't comic art pages that you were like tryout work. You were showing him.
As I recall, what was in. Yeah, it was, like I say, illustration. And I think there was probably a couple of either Uncle Creepy or Cousin Eerie
Mhm.
illustrations. And they definitely had the cartoony feel that Writson brought to those drawings, because that was my inspiration. Writson was easily my favorite artist back then, and I really desperately wanted to draw like him. But there's the EC connection, because for me, Writson was the sort of the gateway to going back and leading me to discovering EC and his inspiration and the artists then, Ingalls and Wood and others. But there really wasn't humor work available right away, and I was given inking work, so I was inking whoever, whatever the jobs were. And it wasn't until Carl Potts, I guess I was inking a couple of I inked covers for the Punisher. I don't know if I did interiors. I think I inked a couple of covers. And I was inking one that I was like, this isn't my idea of what Marvel was. This is the guys shooting people, And I just said, Carl, don't offer me any more Punisher work. I'd rather not do it. But I'd love to do a parody of him someday. And, well, in due time, they were launching What the, and I pitched the plot for the very first issue, and Carl said, sure, let's do it. And that's like, if not my first humor story in comics, that's one of the first ones. It's certainly my first story at Marvel, where I was a plotter and penciler, but first time I actually did something like that. And then I just knew that, inking was just a job for me compared to that. That's really what I do. That's my own voice. And when I could get the humor work, I would take it.
Very good. When was What was the first issue of that? What year? Because I know you started, right, your work, the work you got from Mal Milgram got you started around 83, 84, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm just trying to look here. I guess 88, if I'm looking at the
that DCB, sounds a little right? Early, but whenever first, excuse me, I keep saying first, whenever Image started, this was like the second wave when they were bringing other people in. So I don't know, was that really late 80s? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's looking like.
Okay.
But before that, though, you did have work with First Comics. We should talk a little bit about that. I know that because we do have a Star Slayer page and that as well. I mean, that was kind of I guess your first regular work, right? I mean, you had a
no. I mean, my first regular work was Marvel. I was very lucky to have started at Marvel. I mean, that doesn't usually work that way. Usually people are inking their own book or whatever, or inking independent stuff, and then they eventually get good enough and they show their stuff to an editor, and they get some work at DC or Marvel. No, somehow Al both gave me work and then stuck with me when I struggled for a little bit. And but I got, after doing like an issue, I did a couple pages of the Defenders, then I did a few short stories and a full issue of the Defenders, and then they offered me the Thing as the regular inker.
Right.
So that was my first regular inking work, and I inked Power Pack at Marvel, and that was the longest stretch I had on any book. It was off and on, depending on when Big Dan.
You even have an issue of Jack of Hearts credited to you.
I think I was one of the inkers on that one. Yeah. Okay. Well, at some point at Marvel, I mean, this isn't following chronologically necessarily, but at some point at Marvel, I became a guy who they just called up and said, "Can you handle 2 pages of this or 2 pages of that?" A lot of books where people were running late. Dan Green couldn't handle a few pages from Wolverine or X-Men, and I would do those. That's how I got a lot of work in those days when I wasn't on a regular book. When I was on a regular book, I just usually didn't take anything else on because that was enough work. And I'm not the fastest guy, but also I just never wanted to screw up a deadline. So, I would stick with what I had. But the calling of First Comics is they were here in Chicago. I live in Chicago. They were in Evanston when they started, which is where I grew up, actually, which is a suburb just outside of Chicago. And it was just great to have a comic company you could walk into and, get to know everybody. That's how I met Mike Gold, who I later knew at DC Comics. And I made a lot of friends there. And yeah.
Well, You got
But I got
to.
to do humor there. I wrote and drew stories for Munden's Bar, the backup for Grimjack,
Mhm.
and yeah. So
Well,
by then I knew that's what I wanted to do, is weirder and funnier. It wasn't always straight funny. Sometimes, yeah. I mean, I don't do the way I described my work once is it's cartoony, but it's realistically lit. So it has lighting, depth, weight, but it's goofy. The proportions might be not naturalistic, or at least not Marvel style superhero proportions, but it's not cartoony in the sense that it's Peanuts or Doonesbury or whatever, the simple line art. Yeah.
right. You're not taking, you know, I don't know, abusing the anatomy of characters, maybe like Hembeck might, right, with the squiggly lines and things like that. And I mean, you just had it. You had a very fluid. You have a very fluid style. And we were talking on the phone about some of the pieces that you had inked over Willingham. And I said this to you, is that I thought you were perfect. It was just the line work over his stuff just made it look as good as his work could have looked during that kind of time period in the 80s, which is kind of where the era of his work that I like the most. So no, and it continues to this day. I think you just have a very lush, inking style that, you can see it in Splash Brannigan, you can see it in those warp pages, and you can see it in the commission style pieces that we're going to be offering today on the show.
Well, thanks. I mean, that's when I was still learning. Back when I was working on warp, I was still inking with a pen.
Mm-hmm.
And part of my nervousness of working over pencils was I don't want to screw it up. And I felt I would have better control with the pen than with the brush, even though, like in my portfolio, there was brush work, even though I had done it on my own before I started getting to pro work. And that's really, for me, that's why sometimes I kind of squint, and wince when I see my early work, because the brush is really the tool that I love. But
Mm-hmm.
it took, I think, George Freeman, who's a Canadian cartoonist, he did Captain Canuck. You might have heard of that. Really talented guy. He did the Jack of Hearts issue that I had a part in. But he was looking at my work once when he was visiting Chicago, and he said, "Hilary, you're using a pen on this, right?" He goes, "But you're trying to do brush lines with a pen." I was constantly, snapping the pens because I was trying to get a fatter, more of the thick to thin tapering that you get naturally with the brush. And the brush doesn't splatter, it just, the brush flows, and you just give it a little pressure and you have a thicker line. Well, almost overnight, I said, gosh, he's right. I need to start inking with the brush. And I started to do it, and just almost immediately I was like, why didn't I start this 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you, George.
But I have to say, it seems like a lot of people remember what very fondly. I saw Derek. He shouted the pulverizer. Yes, as that was your Lots reference that he let you have some fun with him. And Tony even said that it was great stuff for the era, and he said it was fun read as a teen, for that time period.
The best compliment I ever got is it was on what someone came up to me at C2E2 here in Chicago, and he said, "Hilary, I just have to tell you a story. When I was in grade school, I was on the school bus, and I was reading and he said, I laughed so hard I peed my pants." And he said, I hope this doesn't make you feel uncomfortable. I said, no, it's the greatest compliment, but I said, I hope you were on the way home. And he said, yes. So he didn't have to spend the day at school with wet pants.
Exactly. Yeah, he could hide it, and with his books as he got off the bus. Wow, that's but yeah, that's a wonderful compliment. I don't think I've heard anyone that I've ever spoken to get that as
I laughed, I cried, I peed my pants. That's.
Did he tell you like what story he was reading? I mean, that would have been.
I don't know if we ever got that far, and I don't even know if he remembered. I mean, he was an adult at the time. This is 20 years on or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, congratulations. I can safely say that I have not made anyone pee their pants while doing this show or otherwise. But all right, so where do I want to go? So one of the things I wanted to talk about, now, you've sold some of your art in the past, and but you've held on to a lot of it, and I think that that's awesome. I mean, a lot of the creators we speak to, it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's 50-50, but it's nice when artists, like their work enough that they want to hold on to it for a while. I mean, I know that there's not much what the artwork out there, and we don't have any for sale here this, today either. It seems that you definitely have an attachment to the pieces that you've done, and that's kind of like dictated what pieces you've offered for sale when you've gone to shows and things. Is that true, or am I just in some weird way I've
No, I think
simplified
most
this?
of the people. I mean, okay, so when I first started out, like inking at Marvel, I had somebody in New York representing me, and I would send the work into Marvel. We just send it through the mail or later FedEx, and I never saw it again because my art dealer would just get the work at Marvel, whatever I was inking, and I would get paid a flat rate for those pages, and then he would then sell them again. Some of those pages are now going for $10,000 or $20,000, on Heritage, but I needed the money then. That was, that's the reality of a working artist. And most of my friends, the same thing. They had the art, and when no one can predict the future, no one knew that the crazy market would, for certain artists or certain eras would be there. Maybe I would have been smarter had I kept it, but what I kept was the work, generally the work that I did. So if I wrote it, I drew it, penciled it, it meant more to me. Thinking, I'm not saying I didn't care about it. I always tried to do a good job, but it wasn't quite as personal. So when I did my own stuff for the only time I've usually sold that stuff was to friends. Bill Ray bought a What the story for me. He's a good friend. He's an artist. That's
And collector. Yeah, he's had I've seen some of the pieces that he shared over on Facebook and whatnot. He has a great art collection.
Oh my gosh, yes, and I think he's starting to sell some of it. But Bill has always been buying art. I never really either had the money or never really got into it in terms of really pursuing the stuff I wanted. But yeah, Bill's got a great collection. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, then that's why some of the stuff, like your Plastic Man work, I mean, there's really not a lot out there. I think you mentioned you did one issue is out there, but like the 3 other books, you've kept the majority of that.
Yeah, that's a case where DC, in spite of my pleading with them, didn't let me ink it. And I'm like, that's what I do best. So John Nyberg, who did a great job, we brought him in to do the inking, and so he gets a third of the pages, so he got a full issue that time and a piece of the first issue. So I imagine all that stuff's out there somewhere, or most of it. But yeah, I kept 2 issues, and I had half of the first one. Splash Brannigan, I've got all that. Yeah.
And well, tell me a bit about Splash Brannigan is one of the things I definitely wanted to. I got a whole list of thoughts here, but we're already at 23 minutes. See, Hilary, I told you this time flies when we're talking art.
When my mouth is open.
No. But with regards to Splash Brannigan and the other work that you did for ABC Comics, I mean, how did you get that work? What was the working relationship like with Alan Moore? I mean, I've talked to a few artists who've worked with Alan in the past, and a lot of times he would almost like storyboard his scripts and things. And I'm kind of curious what how you got started working on those titles, and then what it was like.
Well, I mean, I got started because of Scott Dunbier. He was the editor of the books, of the line of the entire ABC line, and I had a relationship with Scott. Maybe because he was an art dealer and I talked to him when he would come to Chicago. I'm not sure. I don't think we worked together on anything prior to that. But I knew Scott, and so he called me up and said, Hilary, how'd you like to work with Alan Moore? And, you don't get asked questions like that. It was like when Carl Potts, when I did that first story for the first Pulverizer story, he's like, Hilary, I got bad news and good news, good news and bad news. And he's, bad news is you're not going to ink the story. And I'm like, what? He said, good news is you get a choice between Kevin Nolan and John Severin. And so, I love Kevin. I mean, we're actually friends. I've known him forever. But John Severin, this is the direct link back to Mad and EC. So, of course, being asked if you want to work with Alan Moore is kind of the same thing. And it was the reason that Scott thought I'd be right for it, it was a humorous strip. So it wasn't like they were asking me to draw, you know, one of the tortured Batman stories or something that Alan
Right.
did. So it was really wonderful. And, you know, I got to talk to Alan a couple times. You know, we chatted before I got the first script. He told me what he wanted to do. And that was my, you know, kind of narrow window to have a little input into the character. I mean, I designed the character, the physical design, but Alan's original idea was to have him being like a Flash Gordon type character. So Splash Gordon, for those who don't know, he's a creature made out of three-dimensional ink, living ink.
Splash Brannigan.
Splash Brannigan, yes. Did I say Flash Gordon?
You said Splash Gordon.
Splash Gordon, see? There I go. But if it wasn't Flash Gordon, there was another reference. But he was kind of a science fiction character who would have like a utility belt and a gun, well, a holstered object. Well, it wasn't a gun, it was a rapidograph gun. So he would be able to shoot ink out of it. And as he described it to me, he said, you know, like Crazy Cat in the old cartoons from the, you know, the silent animated cartoons, where he would draw a window on the wall and then dive through it to escape, you know, somebody. Mm-hmm. Splash Brannigan had those kind of powers. You know, you could alter, you know, you could change reality or do things with his ink. And, you know, I listened to it and I said, that sounds great. But Alan, if he's made out of ink, why does he need a rapidograph gun? And why does he need a costume? He's ink. He's like this. He's not just a man who has an ink gun or ink powers. He's something else, you know? And Alan said, that's fine. That's great. You know, and we just went that way. I think none of, you know, that idea of him, you know, not having the gun, that didn't change what Alan wanted to do with the stories and everything. And it was, anyway, that was, yeah. So I would get the scripts and they weren't I've heard about these long in-depth scripts that other artists would get for some of the strips. It was kind of charming. I think I first got Xeroxes mailed to me. Then eventually I'm getting faxes, you know, a couple pages at a time. And it would start with, hello, Hilary. What I thought we would do this time, it would be like a conversation. And then he would just work his way into the first page. And he would say most of my input after that initial conversation or two was in background gags. So Alan would describe background gags. And my rule of thumb was I could add or change the background gags, not the primary action. If his gags weren't tied into the story in the foreground action, if they were just weird ideas, that's where I could put my own weird ideas in, right? So, and no one ever said, Hilary, why did you leave out the giant condom dirigible in panel 3, you know, which was actually written into one of the panels. And I just said, well, no, I never had to answer those questions.
Maybe editorial was afraid to ask that question. But I saw, you know, you've worked in Crazy Cat characters and things like that. So that was part of the freedom to kind of play with it. And I have to say, fellow artist Paul Chadwick is in the chat today.
Oh, what a talented and lovely man.
Paul said that Nyberg inked him as well, one concrete issue and a Spirit of the New Adventures story, great inker. And he also says that Splash was absolutely hilarious because your art was crucial to it all working right. All the little decisions of layout and depiction and body English, you know, made it even more, you know, fun and more, you know, and just worked with the character. And I have to agree. I mean, you're again, it's back to that style and the fun and the humor. Your work embodies that and works so well with the character.
Well, thank you. I'm blushing, at least inside, if not visually here. I thank you, Paul. That's really wonderful. Yeah. I mean, that was a high point for me, you know. Plastic Man. Plastic Man was prior to Splash, my favorite superhero, because I just I love humor, but it isn't just that I love jokes. I mean, Plastic Man was like a brilliant visual strip, and Jack Cole was so inventive. And I think both Alan and I wanted to do a little of that with Splash Brannigan. You know, we wanted to capture some of that magic from old animated cartoons, from when comics were fun and not so angst-ridden, maybe. But we were Alan was constantly referencing, you know, Betty Boop, and I was putting that stuff in the background. And we did. I think because I did I love movies, and especially I love old films. And they did like a pinup sketch, whatever issue, behind the scenes thing for ABC, and I drew a Splash Brannigan noir drawing. And I'm almost sure that Alan saw that and said, "I'm going to write Hilary a noir story." And that was like the one long form story we did that was longer than the usual 8 pages. And it was just, it riffed on all these classic scenes in film noir, all the way up to Chinatown. You know, it's just, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. You know, it was very collaborative, and he wanted to work towards your strengths and things that he knew would interest you, right? I mean, you know, we as art collectors talk about that a lot. Sometimes, you know, we give a when we want to get a commission, we might give the artist 3 or 4 character ideas and let them pick, because we figure the one that they want to draw is the one that they're going to probably put a little bit more, you know, love into, right? And make it a little bit more special. And it tends to be true, right? So I mean, it sounds like Alan as a writer was trying to, like, you know, play to your strengths and the things that he felt that you would enjoy, and I think it clearly came out in the work.
Yeah, I mean, it sure seemed like that he was throwing me, you know, pitches straight down the plate, you know, softballs. It was great. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing worse than being stuck in a place that you don't belong, right? And if it's your job, whether it's comics and art or something else, and the more you can kind of within a career like comics, the more you can get from just doing work to pay the bills to work that, you know, that makes you happy, that you know, brings you joy or pleases that secret little whatever fanboy inside you. I'm sure that's what everyone is trying to do in their careers in all walks of life. Yeah. I was lucky. I am and I was a lucky guy. Yeah.
So what do you work on these days? I mean, I know that you know, is there a current project that you're working on, or is it all just more you know, just
well, I'll tell you,
want to work on?
I get the calls, and these days, of course, it's texts and emails, but I get the calls from editors, and they're mostly overseas. And I've done short stories for, there's a German underground called U Comics, U-COMIX, and I've done 3 stories for them. And sort of the main criteria I have for working on things now is, 1, I get to do what I want. And 2, I get to own it. You know, you get first publication rights, but I have it in case I want to collect it at some point. And 3, usually it's, I don't want to be anywhere near AI generated artwork. So, but I don't really, you know, that's not quite as important, because I figure you can't escape that now. It's everywhere. But at least my story will be hand drawn by a human, you know. But I did stuff for them. I just did my first story for a children's comic in England called Goof, and that was a lot of fun. I've worked on a couple of kickstarting projects that were kickstarted. One is it should be out. I think they've had some issues with the printer, but it's funded and everything. It's a you know, the old just grade Z 1950s movie called A Robot Monster. It's like one of the golden turkeys of all time. Well, they did that movie was oddly enough originally released in 3D. So they had a brilliant idea of doing a 3D comic based on the film, or at least, I mean, some of us really took the film as a starting point and went off and did our own thing. So my story is kind of, what if that movie had a big budget? What would it have looked like? And so this guy who was supposedly destroying all kinds of worlds, and then he came to Earth and he was, you know, killing the population and preparing it for the alien invasion. I just show him destroying all these other worlds and things. It's so kind of like really anarchic kind of humor. Yeah. But that was really fun. And it's been a lifelong dream ever since I saw my first 3D movie and saw my first EC comic with the glasses on, and read that a friend had the EC in 3D. Once I saw Wallywood in 3D, I knew I had to do an EC type 3D story.
Sure.
So this was my chance. Yeah. So I can't wait for it to come out.
Do they have you know, a timeline or you know, a release
well, it was
date
supposed
for
to
it?
be, I thought it was supposed to be out already this year. So it's clearly going to be out this year. I just don't know when. I'm not bugging them. I'm just
I think a lot of publishers have had different challenges, of late. I mean, we've had I'm friends with a few, and yeah, nothing's been easy so far this year. So I could see there being other, delays and things
Oh yeah,
with
I mean,
things like
if you're
that.
working
Yeah.
with an overseas publisher, there's problems, and there were problems even before all the tariffs and everything. But there's just technical issues sometimes, and I think doing a 3D book that even increases the headaches technically. So
Hmm.
yeah.
I wanted to highlight a couple other comments. So Keith Tucker said that Splash was a modern day out of the inkwell character, yeah, especially the EC Woody space cover.
Oh yeah, so and that when he says the EC
I'm
space
assuming
cover.
that's that one that's up. I remember there's that EC Woody cover that's up on your website. I know I've seen that one. Or am I thinking of something? Or is he
Oh
referenced?
well, I mean, I've done a number of these things. So
Mhm.
I mean, the thing I did for Fear Agent was definitely in that vein. And I also did a story for Tom Strong that was straight. I mean, it was lettered like it was an EC story. It was like an EC Mad version of Tom Strong and his family. And that was, I got that. It was written for Tom McElwee, who did the cover for that issue. And he got sick or something happened and he couldn't do it. And so like, Hilary, do you want to do this? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So
He says
yeah,
he thinks it was
that was
Tom
one of
Strong.
my he was Tom. So he's talking about Tom Strong. Yeah. Okay. I didn't actually do the cover. That was Tom McElwee. I did the interior story, but that is one of my favorite things. Yeah, I doubt I'll ever sell that one, but yeah.
Hey, that's your favorite stuff. You should hold on to, without question. What was it?
I'm trying. I also want to retire in comfort. I don't want to be
Right, right.
I don't want to be
Yeah.
living on the street with stacks of art in wet cardboard boxes.
No, yeah, that's the last thing you want. There's clearly there's been horror stories, in the business of artists having home fires or
Oh
water
yeah.
damage, and there's yeah, there's you can never be too careful with your art, whether you're a collector or an artist holding onto your stuff, right? I mean, it's
We've had floods in
um,
the building, and I only lost on the first flood before I realized there was going to be water in the basement. I lost some boxes of comics, but including my first fanzine work and stuff. So I did stuff for the RBCC, if you knew the Rocket Blast comic collector back in those days, in the 70s, and those things all were kind of stuck together the way things get pretty
so
ugly.
now everything's at higher ground in the house. That's the most important.
Everything is at least up on a like a milk crate or something. Yeah.
Yes, good.
And the art was never damaged, thankfully. Yeah.
Right. I
Other
saw,
than me
Mark.
spilling ink on my own work, which happens occasionally.
It happened more when you were using a pen, I think, than probably when you were
Maybe so.
using a
Well, there were
brush.
definitely splatter. Yes.
I saw a question from Marcus. He was asking about the sale, of whether there would be any commissions offered today. And no, pre-done commissions, there are a few pieces, but we're not taking commissions for this show. But if things go well, that could be something we offer. Take a couple of commission requests.
I'd be happy to do them through you and Comic Art Fans if that happens. And if not, these people can find me directly on social media.
Yeah, right. And your website's hilarybarta.com. Really easy to figure out. I know you. I don't necessarily think. I don't think you list commission opportunities, but you have a lot of pre-done work
No, I don't.
on
But
your website.
yeah, if you write me, and I'm on social media, so
You got a calf gallery too, so you've been on
I
Comic
do.
Art
You
for
can
a
write
while.
me on the calf gallery. Yeah, and people do and have. Yes.
Good, good. So yeah, so not today, Marcus, but maybe if things go well and we do another show, absolutely, that'd be fun. Because we're already 40 minutes in, and we probably should start the art sale because and I don't think I even checked off like a quarter of the notes I had coming into this.
Well, we'll just
But
have to
that's all
do
right.
this again, darn it.
Yep, unfortunately, we will have to do it one more time. But that yeah. See, I have these question marks, and I'm just gonna have to wait.
Okay.
Sit on them for a while. But yeah, so we are doing an art sale today, as many of you know. We have over 80 people watching live right now, and I can tell you that all the artwork that we're offering today, I have in hand here with me at Comic Art Fans HQ. So I will be the one mailing the art. Any claims that are made today, you'll be emailing me after the show. I actually have two slides I can show that kind of covers the basics of everything. But yeah, there's my email address, bill@comicartfans.com. So if you claim an artwork, you're going to shoot me an email after the show. We'll arrange payment, and I'll collect your mailing information, and we'll get everything out ASAP. I am going to San Diego. I leave early on Wednesday, so I'd like to be able to get as much of the art out before at the end of the day on Tuesday as possible. But be aware that, hey, if you're going to San Diego, I could bring it with me, and not charge you for shipping, which is on the second slide here. So that is actually an alternative. I think Marcus asked that question before the show even started. Yes, I would be happy to deliver art at San Diego. We do want payment within 48 hours of the show, and preferably we like Zelle, Venmo. I mean, I'll even wait on a personal check if it saves us having to charge you a 4 or 5.5% fee, which we do charge if we go through PayPal. So just be aware of that. But we do like to avoid it, and I'm fine with waiting for a check in the mail as long as you drop it in the mail at the beginning of the upcoming week. So just always bear that in mind. We don't like charging fees here. As far as shipping goes, if we are shipping, it's $30 in the US and $65 international. Canada is international, in case you're watching from north of the border here. And again, fulfillment's handled by us. I ship everything in Masonite, very well packaged. Most people in the chat who've already ordered from us in the past can attest to that. I know that a lot of my shipping material gets reused. I've gotten it back numerous times, and I'm happy when that happens, because I always forget to write, don't throw this out. Please reuse the Masonite. It's not cheap, but it does ship things very well and safely. So there you go. And then we've got actually have 25 lots today, and so every slide has a lot number. It'll say lot 1. So when to claim an artwork that you see today, you're just going to type claim and the lot number with it. And that's it. And the first person who does that, and I see it in the chat, they're the ones who get to email me after the show and square things up. Outside of that, I can't think of anything else. But hey, any questions, feel free to ask in the chat as we go through this. Cash as a payment, Marcus, absolutely. If you, because Marcus, you're going to be in San Diego. If you buy something today, I would be more than happy to deliver the art to you and collect cash in San Diego. That's, again, it's not something I think about too often, but you're right, because I will be at a show in the next few days. I'm happy to do that, and cash is perfectly fine with me. You can hand me a check there. I'm good with that, especially if we've done business before. So there we go. Do you have any questions, Hilary? This is your first time doing this.
No, I'll let you handle all the tech stuff here. You're doing great. I'll answer any questions or talk about the art if you want. I'll do whatever works here.
Okay. Yeah, not a problem. And well, so everybody knows we're starting off with I think 4 to 6 commission style pieces, and then we move into the published stuff. I've kept everything kind of grouped by title, because we do have a couple pieces that are from the same title, so they don't all flow like lowest to highest or that sort of thing. But that's the order that we go in. You can claim an artwork anytime after it's been shown. I know a lot of you will take notes on which pieces you're interested in, and you kind of want to see everything before you buy it or claim it. But so yeah, have pen and paper in hand is a recommendation. And the other thing, before we get started, most of you are on YouTube. We have over 85 people watching right now. You definitely want to click the live button, which is directly underneath my name on the screen. That will bring you as close to current to the live, where we're at with the live stream as everybody else in the chat. And I would encourage you to do it a couple times while we're showing the artwork, because every once in a while your internet may buffer. You could be 4 or 5 seconds behind somebody else in the chat. They're going to see the art before you do and be able to claim it before you do as well. So the live button is your friend while we're doing these sales. So,
boy, Bill, this sounds like people on Jeopardy, trying to clicker.
Well, you never know. I mean, especially when there's a couple people that are interested in a piece. I always regret the idea that somebody didn't even see the slide because they're 4 or 5 seconds behind, and that's always disappointing. Yeah, so we don't like we want to keep everybody as happy with the sale as possible.
Understood.
So all right, well, we can just dive into the art. We've got like I said, we're going to start off with some commission style pieces first. Now, the first one is the Swamp Thing commission that you had done. This is on 9x12, priced at $200. It's the same. That's actually the same amount we use when we do 9x12 mystery sketches during Comic Art Live. But your affinity to Swamp Thing, I know you had mentioned you like Bernie Wrightson.
Yeah, well, I really started getting into comics in the 70s, and Writson was right up there as one of my favorite artists. And, you know, I'd read comics from the 60s that my older brothers may have brought home. So they were Marvel guys, I guess. There weren't a ton of them, but I saw Kirby and Ditko and some of the very early stuff in the early 60s. But when I started buying my own stuff, I wasn't necessarily a company man, even though I kind of connected to Marvel early. I was really an artist guy. So I loved Writson, and back then Starlin was doing, Captain Marvel and Warlock and whatever, all these different artists that had really started doing their own thing in the 1970s. It was a wonderful time. So, as I said before, Writson was my kind of bridge back to EC. He was inspired by Frazetta, Ingalls, and other artists from that era. And, that really was one of my favorite times in comics. It got me interested in wanting to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I also loved undergrounds and people like Richard Corbin and, that kind of stuff. I love their art. And I love a lot of artists that I don't draw at all like them. I just love what they do. I never tried to draw like Jack Kirby until I did a piece for his the anniversary of his birth. But I was inspired by him. Just some of my favorite comics were stories that he plotted with, and drew at Marvel. So, yeah. But yeah, I just love the Swamp Thing character. I like the later versions, and when Alan Moore and Steve Bissette took over later, they were wonderful, and but the Writson stories, those early stories were just magical. So,
yeah, they most certainly were. I mean, you go back. There's a few of his pieces from Swamp Thing on CAF. I mean, well, quite a few actually, and they're always amazing to see. Just so atmospheric, and that was like the perfect book for him to be on. I had to get E.C. Harris. He tells a joke or two in our chat when you mentioned the Jeopardy reference. He wanted to say that they don't have to offer their claims in the questioning. So there
what
you go.
Is the price of
Yes, I'll take this for 200, please. So yeah.
I'll take underutilized superheroes for 200, Alex.
Right. Oh man. Well, let's see. Let's go take a look at lot number 2 here, because we were just talking about Splash Brannigan. So this is
Splash Brannigan.
A very nice commission piece. You've got Surly as the signature on this one as well, done just last month.
Now
in June.
If I'm not mistaken, though, I did take all the pieces that I was sending you and put a penciled Barta underneath the.
You did.
Surly.
You did.
So I wanted everything to be signed in some fashion, but I didn't want to do another inked signature, but at least my name's on there in some form. Yeah. But
I meant to ask you about that too. Yeah, because you did pencil sign, I think, everything that came in. So yeah.
For the people that don't understand the Surly thing, I thought, well, this makes it a little more legitimate, perhaps, or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm just don't want anybody to be unhappy. But if they don't want it, they can erase it. But Surly
this reminds me. I didn't.
It's me.
I never got to thank you. You did submit a piece to the OAX auction last January with Splash Brannigan on it to support the Hero Initiative. So thank you for doing that. We were happy to have it.
Well, you're quite welcome. I mean, I think you talked about how tough it's been on different artists over the years, and I've been, contributing to the Hero Initiative in any way I can since they started. And every year they have an auction at C2E2, and donating to that, but also we just have a little jar on the table for the Hero Initiative. And I've seen them in Europe. I've seen those Hero Initiative things all over the place. People, it's wonderful that people, and I don't when I'm at a show, I don't charge for signatures. I know some artists do. I just say, no, I don't charge, but if you would like to donate to the Hero Initiative, it would be appreciated. So often people will drop, a few bucks in the jar for Hero. Yeah.
Well, there's not too many artists that don't say they charge for signatures today, Hilary, but that is an admirable thing to do, to give to have encourage people to donate to the Hero Initiative jar. That would have when you're doing.
I don't know how much I raise. I'm sure there's artists that raise a lot more, but I do whatever I can. Yeah, because sometimes I know the people that are in need. I mean, it's not that far removed from me. And, you know, you always figure you could be that person. But even if I wasn't worried about myself, and I'm not, you know, just you want to take care of for one thing, the artists that you grew up with, to see them, you know, Russ Heath, his last days were, you know, in poverty. And it's like, my gosh, it's awful. So anything you can do to help Hero Initiative, guys, please. Yeah. Thank you, Tony. Thank you.
All right. Well, we have a couple of Simpsons related pieces to show next. So lot 3 was that Noir commission on 9x12. This is fun. You have done some Simpsons work. We talked about that on the phone a few times. But yeah. What inspired this one?
Well, I mean, my love of film noir, obviously, and you know, when we worked on the Simpsons comics, Bongo, the publisher Bongo, they pretty much said you can't sell sketches. You can't do art. You shouldn't do anything Simpsons related unless you're doing like a quick sketch on a piece of Simpsons merchandise. So you could do SketchUp art.
You could remark a toy or a comic, but they didn't. Okay.
Exactly. But they didn't, they were worried about trademark or whatever, a little more so than, and maybe they just didn't quite, maybe it was 20th Century Fox being involved and their lawyers said, hey, you can't let people do this. And so for many years, there was no Simpsons art of any kind out there, but artists started figuring out things they could do. And so I noticed that Phil Ortiz and maybe some other artists were doing, they would Simpsonize when they would do a caricature of someone. They would draw them in the style of the Simpsons. And this isn't a literal, I mean, that's not actually Homer Simpson, but it's a Simpson head with the, you know, overbite and receding chin and the wall eyes, and the women are the same way. But it's just a way of sort of putting the Simpsons into the world of, you know, I tried to sell them on doing a noir story, and they didn't buy the plot. But I wrote like a full 20-page detective thing with Lisa as a private eye. Anyway, it didn't sell. So this is as close as I came to that. I just do.
Well, this one has sold. This one has sold, Hilary.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I meant the story.
Oh no, I know. I wanted to acknowledge that Marcus did pick this one up.
Well, that's great. No, that's great. I love doing this piece, and you know, to me, the drawing the Simpsons was a weird job because I don't draw at all in that style, and it took me a little while to kind of figure it out. But I realized, well, they're like little dolls, and I just want to light them with my, you know, my lighting and add my own style to them. And you could mostly do that on the Treehouse of Horror. At first, the regular books, they wanted you to stick to that, you know, animated even line. But on Treehouse of Horror, you could just go crazy. So this is more in that vein, you know. Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm glad somebody wanted that one.
Yeah, Marcus has broken the ice. And artist Jonathan Lamantia has said, don't let the name fool you. Surly is actually a wonderful and generous guy.
Well, Jonathan's a friend, and Jonathan, I'm going to spank you later. No, it's Jonathan's a talented artist. He does this crazy horror art, really detailed, and it's you look him up online, you'll find his stuff.
I just threw his website link in the chat for those of you who aren't familiar with Jonathan's artwork. Yeah, it's like you said, very hyper detailed, kind of on a horror bent, but very cool to see.
Yeah. Fantastic horror kind of thing. Lots of eyeballs and body entrails and all, you know, enough said.
Exactly. Everything you want out of a good horror artist.
Yeah.
So here, this isn't necessarily horror. It's another Simpsons related piece though. Bart and Professor Fink commission on 9x12. And again, this is a fun one. You know, I love the lighting on it. I love the robot.
You know, to me, every time that Frank, I drew him in several stories, and in all of them, like one time when Bart wanders into his laboratory, I had a bunch of background gags, and it was all these sort of previous or failed experiments, and whatever they were, everything had a Frank face. So you know, he was always recreating himself as a robot. There was like a rat with a Frank head, you know, like. A body floating in a vat of, you know, whatever fluid, you know, when it was a Frank body. that I don't know, for some reason that's an endlessly amusing gag to me. But I just love doing this. It's kind of trying to do like an EC or classic Universal type scene, you know, out of Frankenstein or Dracula or something from the 1930s. Yeah, just the monster descending the stairs, you know. And
Well, I did
again,
leave the R out of it. It was Frink. I apologize.
oh yeah, well, Professor Fink. Oh, don't worry about it.
Yes.
I think
That was
the
all on
fans
me.
know. I think the fans know who it is.
Yes, even if my slide was wrong. But Tyler T claimed this one just ahead of Marcus. So congrats, Tyler, on that one.
Well,
We
thank you. Yeah, Tyler. I
appreciate that.
maybe I should have drawn more Simpson sketches for this.
Well, now we know that. Remember, I told you we'll learn a lot from doing this one, and it'll help. It'll influence what we do in the future.
Yeah, and just to tell everybody that I have a lot of Simpsons pencils. The Bongo hung onto the inks, or I didn't draw them. I did the pencils only. So I have a lot of those, and well, again, they didn't want us to sell any of that stuff originally. So eventually that'll be coming up, and maybe that'll be on Comic Art Fans. You know, we'll test the waters with Simpsons pencils. Yeah,
there were some. You showed me some examples. It was all great. I mean, you know, I thought it was fantastic. But yeah, no. Well, but again, thank you both, Tyler and Marcus, for picking up those two pieces. So we'll take a look at Lot 5 next. Plastic Man commission on this one. You filled the page. You gave us a little background on it as well. It's 9x12 and $300. This is fun though. I mean, this is. I mean, you're putting a lot of the elements of Plastic Man into this that you know, I'm sure made you enjoy it. You know, giving him a big happy grin on his face, and you know, clearly he loves his powers, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there is joy in those Jack Cole's work to me. It's just his cartooniness is on every page. When I draw Plastic Man, it's already gone.
Yes, E.C. Harris picked that up just ahead of Roger Ash.
Thank you, E.C. Harris. And sorry, Roger, I apologize. But that's, you know, I just love the character. And maybe you can see at this size, but I really tried to go back to the rendering that they did. That was at Quality Comics back in the 40s that he did this. You know, the little trap shadows, the same thing that Eisner would do under the lips. We call those trap shadows, where there's like a little line holding the feathering. I just, you know, trying to at least evoke that era. You know, I'm not trying to be old fashioned, but trying to be in the spirit of that time. And of course, that is more of a 1930s to 40s skyline in the background as well.
There you go.
Yeah,
I
love the character. What can I say? Yeah.
No, I mean, it's perfectly suited, and yeah, we're going to see a couple published pages towards the end of the show here too. EC decided he would frame his claim in a question here. What is claim number 5? Congratulations. And
well done. Well done. And I have to ask, is EC, and is that like a reference to EC Comics? Is that just coincidence?
You might utilize it that way. I believe the name is Ed, of course, but EC, it sounds more sophisticated, I think.
Well, it sounds more. It sounds cool because
it does. Well, EC, we've met EC numerous times at different shows just recently as well.
Well, if I could be, you know, Hilary EC Barta, I wouldn't mind. You know,
you could still change your name at some point. I think.
Yeah, my middle initial is A, so
Ab. All right. Well, and then there was one question before we move on to the next piece. Brian Peck wanted to know if you ever got to work with Ramona Fraden.
I never worked with Ramona. Obviously, I'm one of several artists to work on Plastic Man. And she was like doing Plastic Man in I guess the 60s. And I love her work. I love her work on Metamorpho and know, Aquaman. I did talk to her. I met her in San Diego at the con, and I just sat at her table, or stood at her table perhaps, and just chatted with her. I regret Andrew Peepoy, a friend of mine, has taken her out to dinner, and I was like, oh, I should have done that. But we just chatted for quite a while, and she had all these pages, and one of the things she had were DC like horror or mystery pages, you know, from the 70s. Mm-hmm. One of them from a story written by Michael Fleischer. And so we had this conversation because I said, well, you know, Fleischer has a reputation for having written these really violent, hyper-violent stories and just doing everything he could to, you know, violate the comics code. And I talked to her about it, and she just, you know, there was a page there, and there was a lot of white out on one panel. And I said, what was going on here? And she told me the story, like, even though the editors would tell him, you have to follow the rules. You know, you can't show certain things in the story. This particular story, and I don't remember the context, I'm sure some kind of revenge, but somebody was going to kill someone's horse and they put it in a meat grinder, you know, an actual horse. Well, he detailed all this, and she drew what was in the script, even though and then they
were those pages rejected. So she had like rejected pages with her.
The page wasn't rejected so much as they whited out the gore. Or at least a certain amount of it. But it led to this larger. She just said, yeah, his stories were the craziest stories she ever got to draw. And, her style, I bought one of her DC mystery pages, and it's not particularly horrific. I just bought it because it had cool angles and drawing. Fleischer wrote some very intense Spectre. Yes, I really actually loved that stuff. I love that he was doing something so wild. I mean, every issue of the Spectre stories, you would have the Spectre killing someone in a very poetic way, right? Like if the person, whatever their crimes were, they would get punished that way by the Spectre. Very grisly deaths. Giant scissors cutting somebody in half, that kind of thing.
Right. If you put a horse in a meat grinder, you were probably like killed at the Kentucky Derby some way.
Maybe that was it. Maybe that's something like that. Yeah. Anyway,
that's funny.
But she's a lovely woman. She was a lovely woman. She passed recently, but was drawing wonderful commissions right up until her final years.
Absolutely,
in her 90s. Yeah.
Every once in a while, Scott Kress, who repped her over on Catskill Comics, he's still, the family finds a few pieces and he gets them up there, and they're all fantastic. And that she was working on those in the last few years of her life. But yeah, I love her work. I mean, I'm more of a Marvel collector, but I always check out the art drops. It's like one of these days I'm going to find the piece that's perfect for me from her, because I love her style. It's loose.
If I ever had the money or found the right page, like an old Aquaman page would be great. But of course, a Plastic Man page wouldn't hurt either.
That's true. All right. Well, we are moving into the published pieces now. We got 20 of these to look at. And we'll start up. We're starting off with something that maybe some people didn't know that you had worked on before, but SpongeBob comics. I know
there you go.
Yeah, right. So $150 for an 11 by 17. This is from issue 80. It's page 4. Gig like this, how does that come about, Hilary?
Well, Chris Duffy was the editor at Nickelodeon magazine before SpongeBob. And he had been at DC before that. So he might have known me or of me. I don't know if we actually worked together at DC. But, he was in that side of the business, the superhero side at one point. And then he did Nickelodeon magazine. And that's the first time we worked together. I did a few stories for, I'm going to blank on the characters. I didn't do SpongeBob at Nickelodeon. I did Jimmy Neutron and a couple other, illustrations and things. And then, pardon me, we took over SpongeBob Comics when they launched SpongeBob. I did a story. I think I might have had something in the first issue. It's a crazy thing. I don't know if I have time to tell that story, but I almost didn't work for SpongeBob because the creator of SpongeBob would approve everything. And I didn't quite have between Chris looking at my sketches of the characters to the drawn page, it wasn't really on model, but it wasn't off enough because they really used a range of styles. Anyway, I was somewhere in that weird middle ground. And so Steve Hilgenberg, the creator, was just like, no, he's not getting this right, And I almost was like, after redrawing, moving the eyes around and 3 or 4 or 5 times, I finally was like, Chris, maybe this isn't going to work out. He said, congratulations, it's been approved. But I think they mostly kept me away from SpongeBob. This is one of the few stories where I drew SpongeBob. I drew, the superhero characters in SpongeBob. I drew other characters. I drew Plankton, and I didn't get to draw. I wasn't one of the main SpongeBob guys because I just didn't seem to quite have that character down. He's a really odd character to draw. He's a sponge.
Exactly. Hey, when the cartoon first came out, I didn't understand it as an adult. I'm like, why do the kids like this?
Well, I remember because I had never really seen it. I knew of it, but I didn't have cable at the time. It was all on cable. And Chris had to send me a videotape perhaps at the time, or DVD. And I played it, and my first thought is, oh my God, I had to turn down the volume on the TV. This is the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Everyone was, from the opening songs, everyone was screaming. But what got me there, at one point, SpongeBob and his friend Patrick, I think SpongeBob's running away from home, and they leave Bikini Bottom where they live, and they're wandering across the ocean floor, and he has like what you call a bindle stiff, the stick with the bag over his shoulder. They're like they're from the 1930s. But anyway, they build a campfire because night falls, and they're looking at, there's this pause, and Patrick says, "Wait a minute, how can there be a campfire?" And the fire just disappears, and it's a surreal gag, and this sort of meta thing, that they're in a cartoon, but I was like, yeah, there's something here for adults too, and exactly. And so I started to appreciate it based on that. It kind of gave me okay, it's not just them eating, chocolate sundaes or milkshakes or whatever he was into, and yeah. But the stories were fun, The stories really were fun. I mean, Chuck Dixon wrote one or two things I worked on, and yeah, we did a Batman parody in one of them where it's like Crime Gully instead of Crime Alley, where Mermaid Man was the superhero. And that's where something terrible happened to Mermaid Man when he was younger. Okay, I'm rambling.
No problem. So, all right, let's. Here's another piece earlier in your career. So, a Star Slayer page from issue 26, page 4, priced at $175.
Oh wow! You put up the printed page too.
I did. I didn't, and not in every case did I find one or have time to find one, but I found this one, so I thought that was a good point of reference. But these are kind of like, this is the point where Truman was more doing layout stuff, and you were doing mostly the pencils, and then you had Mark Nelson doing inks over your pencils, and we love Mark Nelson on the channel. I mean, he's one of my favorite illustrators, and that's kind of cool that you've got to work with Mark early in your career.
Well, this is how I really got to know Mark. I mean, I'd known him. I think we both worked on, if you're in the area, you'd be at cons and stuff. I might have known him through friends, but also Just Imagine was a local zine, a comic zine that folks published here in the area and around Chicago area. Anyway, Mark, I was brought in to take over from Tim, and he started giving me full pencils, and then it became loose pencils, and then it became layouts, and eventually literally stick figures with layouts. And when I started to fall behind taking over the full inking and penciling, first said, "You need an inker." And I'm like, but once again, like Plastic Man, I'm like, but that's what I do best. And but they said, well, you can find your own inker, find someone you're happy with. And I do have ink samples from a few interesting people like Gary Gianni, and others who are people in the area that I said, would you mind drawing, doing a little. Gary said, he said, I don't want the job, but I wanted to see what it would be like to ink you, But Mark ended up being my choice, and it was wonderful because he really brought a lot to it. And you know how good he is. So, and yeah, I have a whole lot of art from that because I was the penciler for, I don't know, it was a couple of years or close to a couple of years. There's a lot of those pages, and I thought this was a particularly dynamic page from when I was doing the full pencils,
Right. No, I did too. I mean, you'd sent a couple. I held one back, but this is a good one. And Eldon Mock has claimed it, so thank you, Eldon. We appreciate.
Oh yeah, thank you so much, Eldon.
Now let me see here. Oh, we're switching to a different title with the web. This is Roger Robinson pencils with your inks on it, and this one's priced at $275 on 11 by 17. And you sent me a couple examples. This is the one I picked, but because I think the page layout's just fantastic. I mean, all three pages had something I really liked about it, but I love this one, and I love the fact that it's very dark, it's well lit, and and I love those 4 inset panels between the the top and bottom one. It's just the storytelling was really great on this page.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Roger really is talented. This is the first time I worked with him and got to know him. We talked a few times, and his work is like, he's much more graphic than I am. It's a little more black and white as opposed to rendered, and it took me a little while to get the feel of this stuff. But this, I think, was particularly tightly penciled. Here's a guy who doesn't do like the line with to hold the shadow and then put an X in it. He pencils that black in. He really wants to see what it'll look like. And his layouts are on the back of the page. I'm sure this is no exception. We'll have like either blue line or on the front that he's
almost entirely. Yeah, I was gonna.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention that. I'm glad you said that, because literally on the back, it's pretty much all drawn in, right? I mean, I was on all 3 pages. Yeah, same approach.
Right. They lay it. He lays it out literally. He might. Maybe, I don't know how artists do that. I don't work that way. Maybe they first do it positive on the front part of the page, flip it over once they have something on a light box, and then tighten it up on the back. Maybe that's the process. But a lot of times I'll see the construction stuff on the back where, the figures and working out all the muscles and the structure of the figures and the panels and everything, the perspective is all worked out there so that they don't have to wear out the front of the page. Because the more you pencil and erase, the more it's tougher to ink on paper. Paper eventually, the surface starts getting pretty raw, pretty rough. But anyway,
that's where the X is coming in.
It was fun working with him. But yeah, it's a very different kind of look, than the kind of stuff I normally gravitate to. But it was interesting to see if I could do it. And he's a swell fellow. Very talented guy, like you say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the next 2 pieces are a different IP from from what we looked before, but they're the Ninja Turtle pages. So this one, this is your inks over Jim Lawson. It's from.
Oh, and it was colored. I don't think I ever saw the finished book.
Yeah, I have this one. I didn't get the one for the next page, but yeah, the colors were actually done pretty well. I like the way it was handled. But these, what's that?
I thought it was I assumed this was in black and white because I remember the original book was in black and white, and I just assumed this was also in black and white. And why else would he do all that beautiful textured cross hatching? But I really, this was fun because you can see his style. There's a lot of cross hatching if you look at the details, and I did it all with brush, the cross hatching part, maybe all of it with brush, and except for panel borders and things like that. Which just shows you that I had, by the time I was doing this, I had a lot more control of the brush. Because normally, if you have cross hatching, you would, a lot of artists do that with pen, because it's pretty much line on top of line. But I just thought this stuff really would look nice with brush and give it a softer look.
There you go. Derek, who actually gave me this image, said that the U.S. version was black and white, but the U.K. had a magazine edition.
Oh, I see. Okay. Colored. Well, thank you for that. Oh, thank you. Okay. Well, there you go. I learned something.
Titan books.
I don't always, artists, I don't always get to see the printed book. You don't always get comps of everything. And you certainly don't get comps of every edition, right? Foreign language and others. So that's interesting to know. I think it looks pretty good in black and white. So I don't think color was necessary, but I do love when I see my work in color for the first time, when I draw a comics page, that's when it finally looks like a comic book. Those are the comics I grew up with in color. So, yeah.
Well, I can show the other page as well. Sure. So this was issue 3, page 2, and these are on 10 by 14 pages, a little bit smaller than your standard 11 by 17s that we're used to seeing. But I mean, I've got, like, Mike Allred works smaller a lot of the time, so I've got.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. And so this is the other page. This is page 2 from that book. I guess if I was doing them chronologically, I would have showed this one first. But
I don't remember how many pages I inked. I don't know if I did the whole story, or again, if this was a thing where they just threw me a handful of pages because the book was late. I don't recall. I don't remember doing like 20 pages, but then again, I don't know if I ever saw the comic, so I've never been able to reference it afterwards. But his stuff is really beautifully drawn. It's very light touch with the pencil. Almost nothing for me to do in erasing it, to be honest with you. It was really kind of interesting, delicate kind of approach. I assumed he might have done some penciling on another sheet and then traced it down. But I don't know if, I never talked to the guy, but really nice.
Styles definitely worked well together.
Yeah, nice varied panel layouts. The angles are really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, cool stuff.
All right, and I saw a question, well, not a question, a request from someone who was asking about telling a story about something from the Thing comic, but we have a Thing page, so we can reference that if you're familiar with the question.
Cam Smalley. Hi, Cam. Well, I don't know if there's a story, but this is just Marvel doing promotion. When the Thing book was in preparation, they had me send in a photograph. They asked me to send in a photograph because they were doing an ad, I thought. And it turned out it was this promo page where there's like a statue of the Thing, and Ron Wilson, the penciler of the book, is working with like a rivet gun or something, and he's whatever, a jackhammer, working on carving this thing. And John Byrne is working on it. He was the writer of the strip. And I'm in there somewhere. I don't know what I'm doing. And yet, our editor is overseeing the process. And yeah, I got to be sketched by Marie Severin. And the crazy thing is, and this is how you can just know that this person's an old-time professional, really old school talent. I sent a photograph of me leaning up. I didn't have too many photos to send. And I'm leaning up against the back of our family car, and it's of the front of my face. And she drew me from a 3/4 behind angle in the illustration, and it still looks exactly like me. How did she know how to turn my head and make it look like me? But she did. So,
well, she had an amazing career, and all that time in the bullpen, I think, taught her a thing or two. And she,
sure.
She taught all those guys in the bullpen how to draw practically, or how to be good comic artists and illustrators.
I mean, she
right?
colored at EC back in the 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, my gosh. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. I'm glad Cam reminded me. But that was such a moment. That was like working with her brother John when he inked my story, and I called him up to thank him, and had a brief conversation with him. I just like pinching myself. How am I working with these people? How am I somehow one comic page removed from them? I don't get it.
Hey,
what's next?
Well, what's next is a Grimjack page, but I wanted to show the page before I show the slide, just because there is a stat on it. So I wanted to at least let everybody know where the stat is, and I held it up to the light. I know the art's all under it. Looks like they just shifted a character on it a little bit.
Yeah. I apologize for that. I should have told you.
No, it's not a problem at all. But it's this panel here. Primarily, it's almost like, I think there's like maybe two stats. Like they shifted the background and then shifted the character a little different from the background. So there's two stats, and maybe
kind of annoying. But I assume because I looked at it too before I sent it in.
Mm-hmm.
The art was drawn. That art was drawn on that page. There is no second page, and they decided they needed maybe room for the sound effect, whatever it was. I can't recall now.
Right.
I wish these things were done where you could peel them away. And
I know I was looking at it too, and I thought, but I held up to light. You can see it. The character barely shifted. But the thing, and I remember I pointed this out to you too. I love the panel layout because they look at this narrow bit of panel just so they could get the blam, 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 blam in there.
Yeah, it is an odd layout, but but it does suggest that there's action going on. Anytime you put diagonals in there with panel borders,
exactly.
Yeah.
So this is
adds that level of movement, I guess.
This was lot 11. It was so this is Henry Flint pencils and your inks, Grimjack 77, page 12, priced at $350.
Okay, just a minor correction. Flint Henry. It's the other way around.
Flint Henry. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yep, it had a comma in it, and I didn't change it when I put
Grimjack fans will know. Are you dyslexic? Yes. I think I have a little bit of that too.
No, well, I've been known to leave out characters and flip-flop names. Flint Henry. Yeah, well, I noticed there's a few people on CAF who actually kind of have a focus on Flint Henry's artwork, which I thought was interesting because Flint
is a very interesting guy. I mean, I think he worked in radio for a while. He has quite a voice for that, real kind of deep voice. But he sounds like a radio announcer, and his work is just always full of energy and detail. his Grimjack, just the background stuff. There's scenes that, I mean, I didn't ink too much of his stuff, but boy, he was a kind of a cool guy to talk to on the phone. Anyway.
All right. Well, this one is
Grimjack was great for me. That's where Munden's Bar, if any of these guys were reading Grimjack, Munden's Bar was the backup strip. And that's really where I did most of my work, was in Munden's Bar, because they allowed me to write and draw my own stories there. And I just
and you didn't work consistently on Grimjack, but you had different, like a couple issues here or there, right? It wasn't quite like
I don't think I ever inked Tim, for instance, Tim Truman. I inked Flint on maybe an issue, and I also inked Sean McManus, a wonderful artist, on an issue. But yeah, no, that was not one of the books that I did much work on. Yeah. It was fun to read, but and again, I loved it from Munden's Bar, because Munden's Bar was like a playground where you could do whatever you want. Yeah. Anybody could walk into Munden's Bar. It's where all the dimensions met in this little part of Cynosure called the Pit.
Very nice. And you have some of those pages still in your, awesome.
I think I have a McManus. I only had a few. I got a piece of whatever, issue I worked on. And I may have one or two left. Maybe I did. I don't know if I sent you one or showed you one, but
I don't recall.
I do have a little more.
Back and look, but you know what? I think you did, because I do remember seeing something from McManus.
Okay.
But congrats to Eldon for picking up this one as well.
Yeah, thanks, Eldon.
Another good one. Now this next piece is a cover to Black Flame Archives #7. This one's done on 11x17, priced at $400, and and this was actually, I think it was printed in a couple different ways. So I think it was used on like a variant cover and this more traditional one that I have here. But it's got your classic monsters in here.
Yeah, well, this is like a Peter Gillis character, and he's kind of a wild strip. And I believe that the little lizard there was him tearing out the sort of soul of one of these demons, and inside is this little lizard type thing. There was some reason there. It's lost in the memory now why I drew that particular element. But wild costume, kind of it's sort of like Elric and Doctor Strange, and I don't know, all these different things mixed together. But it was always an interesting strip. I mean, it was, really interesting artwork. Did it start in the back of Mars? Is that where the Black Flame started? I'm trying to remember.
I don't remember.
Yeah, before they might have done I don't know that they ever did a series of Black Flame. Like they might have done a special, but this is from the second incarnation from First Comics later on. And I think they were collecting the stories that had run previously or reissuing them and then collecting them later. So, but Alex Wald, who was the art director, he was right after Joe Staton, who was the original art director. He took over after Joe left. And Alex Wald was working at First again with their new incarnation and asked me if I wanted to do a cover. So, yeah, it's a lot of tentacles. You're right. I do love drawing tentacles. I do a lot of science fiction illustrations just for fun, kind of those 9.5 or 9x12 things. And I have to keep reminding myself, no, aliens, not all aliens have tentacles. Draw something besides tentacles.
Yeah. No, well, I was looking through those pre-done pieces on your website. Yeah, but you don't always draw them with tentacles. There's a few like
well, only because I have to remind myself and tell give them some weird, legs and arms and crab-like features or something. Yeah.
All right. Well, we just talked.
Yeah. Okay. The Thing. Here you go. The very first regular job I ever had in comics was inking Ron Wilson on The Thing.
Right. You started with I think issue 3. And you worked on it at least up till issue 8, which this is from. Yeah, and I know I have a guy. There's a guy in CAF whose first comic book he ever read was the Thing issue 4, if I'm not mistaken. He owns a few interiors from it, and even the cover. And he was like, "You got any pages from that?" And I'm like, "No, we don't have any pages from 4, but we have a page from 8." So
Yeah, these. I mean, it's a long time ago, and this is. I think I had these. This is like before somebody stepped up and wanted to, sell my work out, from New York. So I was still getting the inks then. But these pages had been on tables at conventions off and on for decades. My friend George Hagenauer was selling them for a while, and I think this may be the only one left. It's possible there's another one somewhere, but that would be it. I've been digging around and haven't found any. So most of the big action pages obviously are gone, but you do have the Thing and Alicia, his true love, here. I don't know if she was getting an eye operation here. She clearly has her head bandaged here.
that is the question. So this one's $400, lot 13, the Thing. Now, I don't remember, where are we going to from here? Oh, we're staying in some Marvel. So we have a Power Pack page for lot 14.
Okay.
This is from issue 31, page 15. It's on 11 by 17. It's awesome. I love the layout on this. Like I'm a big fan of the Kirby 4-panel layout, and I love the idea that you kind of canted things a little bit while still keeping that kind of long-standing 4-panel tradition. In this one, and it's just nice action throughout the whole thing.
I mean, I think I have a feeling one of the reasons that this was 4 panels instead of 6 or more was because there's so much action in each panel. I mean, he had to this is like it's a team book, all the Power Pack kids. There's 4 of them plus Franklin Richards, who's, I don't know if he's in this page or not, probably not. But then you have a team of bad guys. I forget what these guys were called, but these teenagers or whatever they are. But it's just so elegantly drawn. The perspective and the figure. I mean, you have this guy holding that refrigerator up in both panels 2 and 3, and you have him shot from below and then seen from above, and it's just quite dramatic. Yeah. That can't be the original coloring, though. Is that from a reprint? I'm just curious.
I got it from.
It doesn't ring with my memory. Like it looks a little different, but it's been a long time since I looked at the original comics.
There's a few websites out there where you can read comics online, and I lifted it from one of those.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know. It could be slightly altered. That's for sure.
But I have to say, John Bogdanov is one of the finest artists I've ever been lucky enough to ink, because his drawing is just really wonderful. His figure drawing, everything about his work. But he really loved working on those children, the stars of Power Pack, and that love to me is in all the figure drawing and the expressions of the kids. He just really had a touch for that. There's just beautiful drawing, just real sensitive drawing. And I hope that's not a negative to anybody, but I mean, just you're sensitive in the sense of capturing nuance, and subtlety of expression.
Well, I think we have a couple of the pages by John that you inks from Power Pack.
And a rare appearance of Zipatone on the underside of that refrigerator. Sorry.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yellowed, but still intact, apparently.
It hasn't fallen off.
Right. And the lettering's still intact. Yeah.
That's the other thing to appreciate on it as well. But so this is issue 32 for lot 15, page 12. And again, that second panel is awesome. I mean, the whole page, is fun.
I love this character. He's the garbage man. And he's
got a physique.
Oh, he does. I think he's the super in an apartment building. These kids live in New York, and I think he's the super, and he's this big, grimy guy. But he's really he's like a character out of Popeye, like he's Bluto or something. He's just, it's really, and the way John draws him, it's both realistic and yet animated or cartoony and expressive, right? It's the best of both worlds to me. He had it all, has it all. He's still drawing. He's just so talented, so good, and yeah.
Well, Andre got this one. Nice pickup, Andre, because this is. I mean, the more I'm looking at it, it's just It's a great page. Every panel, the first panel is like just looking through his monstrous arm at
Right.
the characters, and the second panel using the power. I mean, that's and then
And then you have like that. To me it goes back to Kirby, but whenever the Hulk or anyone would Thor would, whenever they'd hit the concrete or the whatever the asphalt, they'd have the little sending people up in the air. Those lines that indicate.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that fifth panel is amazing. This is a great page.
Yeah. Well, thank you,
Right.
Andre.
Yes, and so let's take a look at lot 16 then. This is $700. This is from issue 33, page 20, and you get a couple New Mutants in here as well. Warlock, obviously, nice, and you get the full team on top of everything else. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff.
The full team, and Franklin Richards, who was co-starring for a while. But yeah, that first panel, the beautiful expressions. I mean, their faces. It's like a pinup panel, Yeah, it's great. It's great. I mean, and credit to Louise Simonson. I think John as the artist and Louise as the writer, and June Brigman as well. But she was the first artist. But I mostly work with John. I only inked June a few times, but his stuff I just that's really what I did much of my work on Power Pack, and I just love his drawing. Sorry, I know I'm gushing here, but he's so good. He's so good.
Right. No, I love this page too, and Andre loved it enough to pick this one up as well. So thank you, Andre.
Woohoo! All right, a Power Pack fan, perhaps.
And Power Pack and Warlock. I know that I saw him at Heroes not too long ago, and he actually had he got an artist to draw SpongeBob as Warlock. And if you Google it, or not Google it, go to CAF and search for it, Hilary.
Okay.
I'll give you the link after the show. It came out really good. It was very fun. Probably the most humorous piece I saw come out of that show. But Andre got it. It's great. It was one of my honorable mention picks a few weeks ago.
Well, there you go, though. But Warlock is a place where people who are designing superheroes said, this is how we're going to backdoor in a cartoon character here.
So true.
He's straight out of Warner Brothers,
Well, we have one more Power Pack page here to offer, and this is from issue 47. And I had to go read the issue just so I could understand how the story went, But this is fun, There's the clear Mobius references here. This isn't a DPS. This is actually, the comic was turned on its side for about 6 or 7 pages, I think, throughout the story, and this one's just, I think it's gorgeous. I love every panel in it. It's fun. The characterizations, on the birds are. I mean, it's just awesome. I really seeing this page in person.
A little background on that the issue turning on its side. It was in the story. They were really paying homage to a number of artists. There's George McManus and Bringing Up Father, the characters here. But on this page, I mean, the character, you probably can't make out the small character, but he's from Little Nemo and Slumberland, Winsor McCay's strip. And, the Power Pack kid and the character from Little Nemo are having this adventure. Well, if anyone there knows Little Nemo, one of the greatest comic strips of all time, Winsor McCay was a master of perspective and storytelling, and he would just do these panels where they were walking through cities that were turned sideways, so they had to climb up the sides of walls. And, well, they did that in this book. The story suddenly tips sideways like it does in or the reality tips sideways, the perspective, I guess gravity or whatever. And so the characters now and the book goes with it. The book tips with the art. And I can't remember how this happens and why. I don't know if she's traveled to a different dimension. Honestly, I can't remember now. Someone can tell me. Did you read it? You said? I
did.
Okay.
It is like traveling to a different dimension. But that moment when they tipped everything sideways was fun. That was a cool. Yeah. But
the homage to Mobius here, you can see like the Arzak, that bird pterodactyl type flying critter. That's all lovingly rendered too. So. Yeah. Now, again, here this is completely different from the other pages. It's, but it's just always beautifully drawn.
Agreed. So that's the last Power Pack page we've got. We
Okay.
are over to some ABC artworks here. So the first one is so lot 18. This is a gray shirt. It was from Indigo Sunset 5, page 6. Rick Veitch pencils on this one, right? So it's 11 by 17.
Yeah.
And had you worked with Rick before, going over to work on ABC?
I don't remember, you know, I know I helped somebody on one of the Supreme things that he did. That one's gone already.
Yes. Thank you,
Yeah,
Rich Donnelly.
but what Rick, to me, the thing that gets me about Rick stuff is he's so good in the storytelling. And I think Alan wrote these stories with that in mind, that they were doing like an Eisner-esque kind of thing. What they did in 8 pages is extraordinary sometimes, the amount of story they would cram in there, just like Eisner would do that with the spirit sections. But yeah, it's very goofy at the same time. It's dramatic and has a lot of weight to it, and it was a happy collaboration for me. I mean, it didn't last long. We did just a couple stories, but he seemed to be happy with it. Yeah, it's Alan Moore, so you've got
right. You can't go wrong.
You get Todd Klein's lettering and right there on the page, Yeah. And that crazy thing at the end where this guy, I think he's a psychiatrist, is like, he's got everything stuffed into his ear and it's wearing everything. Yeah. It's
yeah, that's not where you put your pipe. That's all
not where you put your pipe.
I haven't smoked one before, but I know that's not the proper method.
The Three Stooges might have done that once with steam coming out of their ears. Yeah.
Oh man, well, all right. So thank you, Mr. Donnelly, for picking that one up. That was lot 18. Then next up we have lot 19. This is from Tomorrow's Stories, issue 12, page 3. Again, pencils by Rick. This one's $600, and Cobweb in this one. I mean, and
Gray Shirt.
And Gray Shirt. I'm sorry. Yeah, together on this one. Just fun. Again, this panel layouts are great. I mean, it's just and you get the lettering on the page. ABC was fun. I mean, the stories were always imaginative. I mean, Alan obviously had a lot to do with all that, but he picked artists that really just worked well with the characters and stuff. And again, this is a fun page. Really, really nice.
You can see, as I talked about, Eisner, you can see that second tier. You have the 3 panels where he goes down into the basement or whatever it is, but that middle panel with him standing in the shadows is straight out of Eisner to me.
Mm-hmm.
And this story, as I recall, Cobweb beats the crap or kicks the crap out of Gray Shirt, and then they have sex afterwards.
Well, that's how you make
Not
up.
on this page.
Right?
There's no sex on this page. But that's.
It's a great page. I'll give you that. I mean, when I saw it, I was like, "Ooh, this would be a page that you'd want to get from this book." Just because, again, I agree that the second panel, that's the one that got me. Even though the fight scene's awesome, I love the way Cobweb's drawn in here and everything, and that last panel is fantastic. But just really great storytelling in this one. And Michael McIsaac claimed this one just ahead of Rich Donnelly. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Yes. And sorry to Rick, was it? Yeah. Okay.
Rich, but Rich got the page before that.
Oh,
so
okay.
he's not without.
Remember to refresh your browsers or whatever you have to do.
That's right. Hit that live button, everybody. Yes, that's how you because it is it's literally not even a second between the two of those. But let's see. We'll go ahead and take a look at lot number 20 next, and we're going back to Marvel for this one. This is a page from Alpha Flight 69, page 12. John Calamy pencils on this one, and it is 11 by 17. And I think it's got a little bit of like a zip in that last panel, right? A little bit of zip tone. This one,
I think to show that she's the character has got her hands up on a glass window,
right?
So I think to get atmospheric perspective, he wanted to put zip. Probably a note on the side of the paper, or at least he told me about it. John is an artist that lives in the area. I think he was teaching, or is teaching it out in DeKalb here, outside of Chicago. And I know John. I think he might have been a student or a colleague of Mark Nelson's at one time out there. And Mark taught at DeKalb. And Mark, you can see how talented he is. I mean, the change of angles and just the casual way he does the perspective on this figures. This is not easy perspective. Big influence probably from Steve Rude, I think, in that naturalistic but expressive figure drawing. Yeah.
Well, this one was picked up by Malvin Velez. Thank you, Malvin.
Yeah. Well done. It's a beautiful page.
Agreed. Now, this next one is it's interesting. This is from a Commando. If you remember the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, a Commando mini comic. It's the end page to it, and it's got Mark Silvestri pencils and your inks on it. It is on an 11x17 board, with the art being about 8x13. And I couldn't find a copy of the book, but I found somebody on YouTube flipping through it.
Yeah.
So I left the fingers in place so you can see this was a mini comic. I don't know, did it go with like the toy or the video?
Yes, no, a company called Diamond Toys, which is local here in Chicago area. I probably got the job because Jim Engel, my friend, I'm going to see him tonight for dinner. Jim worked there, and he's like, Hilary, we need a comic done for a Commando toy. And I know I've never done anything like that before or since. Well, actually, I did work on an adaptation of a Bruce Campbell movie, but it was fun.
Which one? Hilary,
wait,
stop right there. You said Bruce Campbell adaptation. What?
Oh, The Man with the Screaming Brain.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
It was a movie that Bruce directed, and they basically handed me the script, and I adapted it to a mini series, and then Rick Remender was the penciler, and I was the inker on it. So got talked to Bruce and his writing partner a little bit. Got hear all Bruce's complaints about they were shooting somewhere in the former Yugoslavia, and they'd show up on the set, and they'd be promised 100 extras, and there were 10 guys, that sort of thing. Just he was just constantly complaining, and what he kept telling us is that what I want the comic book to be is the director's cut of the movie, which is an odd way of putting it, but he basically said, you guys have the budget, right? Because you can just draw anything without having to pay for it. Needs more mesh shirts. Okay.
Hey, Stingray says he read this comic, so all right. And E.C. Harris went to the movie premiere.
Yeah. So, well, I saw that movie.
That was too. So
I saw that movie. Yeah. So anyway, I want to end this quickly. I know we're running along, but the main Doug Rice laid it out. Mark Silvestri I knew because Mark actually worked in my apartment for a while. We kind of shared that space when he was living in Chicago. And I asked Mark if he'd want to do it, and he said, sure. So I think he just took Doug's layouts and then didn't blow them up, but just worked the size of the layouts. That's perhaps why it's so small, or it's perhaps that nobody wanted to work on a tiny mini comic at 18 by 11 and have all the detail lost. But he stuck very closely to Doug's layouts. Doug's layouts were really on the money, and then I inked them, and it was a wild, weird job. What can I say? Yeah. I don't know. I think I have copies of the comics somewhere. I probably should have pulled them out, but yeah.
That might have been.
This is the only page I have left that I haven't found in any others. So they wandered off over the years. Yeah.
Well, this one's still available. Dan Goodwin did claim lot number 10. That was one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pages. So thank you for that, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, now let's see. I think we got just 4 more pieces to look at. Then we can recap what hasn't sold. But lot 22. This is from Plastic Man, of which there, like we talked about earlier, there's not a lot of these pages out there. And this is from issue 3, page 7. It's on 11x17. Priced at $1,000. You got Plastic Man doing what he does best throughout. I mean, every panel here. And again, I'm a fan of the 6-panel layout too. This is just a great overall page. I love every single panel.
Well, thank you, Bill. When I learned I was going to be able to do this, I just bought as much Jack Cole work as I could. There wasn't that much reprinted at the time, and so I bought a lot of. I couldn't afford a lot of Plastic Man, but I bought a lot of his stuff. I got every reprint book I could, and I just love his inventiveness and storytelling. There were gags in every panel, and he just constantly came up with new things, new shapes, new ways of using Plastic Man's elastic stretching abilities. And the first panel may very well be me referencing Robert Crumb's famous Stoned Again poster with the guy whose head melts, you know.
Oh, yeah.
That may very well be. But, you know, you got Woozy here appearing in on the bus in the next to last panel. And to me, my favorite part is that great take by Plastic Man. That is like an animated take. And Cole did that. He constantly had characters doing, you know, like he'd have multiple faces where they'd be going, well, what? You know, and they'd suddenly be turning their head. Those takes are just really fun to draw. And like, you know, okay, so how do I make this look a little different than every other way I've drawn Plas? So I had the legs folding up and the head stretching backwards. And yeah. And the script, you know, was not too shabby either. Phil Folio had some pretty funny lines.
Yeah, Phil Foglio wrote the miniseries, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Doug Rice, Phil, and I are all friends, and we co-plotted together. We would just sit in Doug's apartment and make each other laugh, and then I would take it and try to come up with the background gags and stuff, and then Phil did the script, kind of Marvel style afterwards.
Awesome. Well, EC was quick to claim this one. Thank you, Ed, for that one. And I did see that Scott Spilkey claimed lot 9. I think that was what was that? The other Turtles page? Am I mistaken? No, that was the first Turtles page. So thank you for that, Scott, as well.
Well, Scott and Ed, thank you both, and you have excellent taste. What can I say? These, yeah,
so true. Oh, all right. So let's move on to lot 23. And it is our second and final Plastic Man page. This is the
speaking of takes, that last panel where they're jumping in the air.
Yes, and I have the page number wrong on it. I do apologize. It is page 22. I don't know why I didn't change the number. That was the page number from the previous one.
You know,
this is the end page.
Okay, yeah, it is the final story page, and just to be explain something to you guys. Oh, fantastic. That you guys are so responsive to the Plastic Man pages is really warm in my heart, because I loved working on that strip. I just got to say, when we get these, especially as the inker, you get the pages back, and Marvel would trim the top of the pages off all the time to fit on the stat camera, they said, but often they cut off all the information, like issue number and page number. So what you would sometimes have is the lettered page number at the bottom, but that would often be different than the folio page, because there's advertisements. So there's story pages, and then there's the page of the actual physical comic book, including the ads. And sometimes it's hard to, without having the comic book handy, and I seldom do, it's hard to identify what this page is. So, you know, so anyway, I don't know. Maybe I'm explaining the obvious here to collectors, but it's, you know, it is the last page. That we can be certain of. And I just love Woozy's take at the last panel with his legs crossing. You know, I don't know why that's funny to me.
Well, it makes you, as long as it doesn't make you pee while we're on camera, then we're all good. But we are near the end of the show, so if you have to get up and change, it's probably the timing might be right if you were going to. But yeah, congrats to Chuck Tim for picking up this one.
Yeah,
again, a very nice page.
And this was the issue where California turns out to have been Atlantis, you know, and some shifting of the continents way back in time. But that explains all the craziness in California, all the wacky people.
Well,
that might have been Phil's idea. I'm not sure, but it sounds like it.
Okay, well, we have lot 24 is next, so we'll switch over to that one. So this is a from Tomorrow Stories 9, and it's page number 2. Alan Moore scripted Splash Brannigan story. I think the first, was it issue 6 or so of Tomorrow Stories that might have had the first Splash appearance. So this is an early one, and it's
you put me on the spot, but it's somewhere right in the middle or early. Yeah. I don't remember the exact sequence.
So tell me a bit more about it. I mean, this one I love. I mean, obviously the art's fantastic, but then you look at the lettering and just the action on the page. This is just a joy to behold.
Gulp. plish, splitoo, squelch. Alan wrote this stuff. Alan had and by the way, thank you, Brian, for picking that up. Alan would write these crazy sound effects and things. The dialogue's hilarious. The stories are wonderful. But then Todd Klein is easily my favorite letterer. I think Todd is pretty much almost retired now. He wrote a book on lettering and kind of is kicking back. But I've tried to get him to work on other things since Splash, and he's, I'm not really doing that anymore, Hilary. And it's a hell of a lot of work doing this, because I would give him challenges. If you look at this page, I had this dialogue. This was not like Marvel style, right? I had the dialogue in advance. But I would just guesstimate how much room, Todd would need. And he had to make it work. And I don't think there's any place in that book where he wasn't bending over backwards to not cover something up that was important, and it wasn't just sloppily placed over somebody's arm. He really lettered to fit the art, and it's very expressive. It's old fashioned. I just love it. It really looks like a comic book page. Now, just as long as we're talking about it, you mentioned stats. I believe he lettered the balloons that are in dark for the reverse Splash, because this story features Splash and his opposite, who's like a white negative Splash. I believe for that lettering, they reversed out the positive black lettering and put little stats pasted up on those balloons, but they're still intact on the page. If you can see what I'm talking about.
Oh no, definitely I can see that. Yeah. Okay. And wow.
But the gag in the panel that you highlighted, where the two guys are pushing against Daisy Screensaver, is the name of Splash's sidekick, just pushing her, bosoms up. That's to me, like I'm just throwing that in there. Maybe it was in the script, it's possible, but trying to fit that into an action panel. I just love having problems like that. How do I get that? How do I throw something goofy into the background here? But I just love drawing these two guys fighting too. I mean, they're just, this is a case where I think it's supposed to suggest that they're punching each other multiple times, but also these guys have the power to change shape, so they can have four arms punching each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, I love the entire page. It's great. And so Brian, again, thank you for picking that one up. There was I know Rich Donnelly and Dan were also interested in that. Maybe even Marcus, I saw. But we do have one other page to look at, and I will go ahead and switch over to lot number 25. So same book, but it's the title page, and it's a riff on a classic DC cover. I mean, was that part of Alan's script, or was that you?
Oh yeah, no, this is all in the script. It's the Splash of Two Worlds, and it's riffing on the Flash of Two Worlds, which was a Carmen Infantino story. Is that Julie Schwartz? Those are his years there. And so it's a Flash, Silver Age DC. That first panel is a riff on that. And then, of course, they battle throughout this story. I mean, there's other pages, and it really is pretty wild what they go through. But,
right. I mean, there's a Crazy Cat reference in there. You got Godzilla in the background.
The War of the Worlds. There's the Edward Gorey War of the Worlds tripod, whatever is in the background there. That almost everything in Alan's stuff on the Splash pages are in the script except for background gags. So the Watch for Falling Girders and the Godzilla, that's just me, because in the original strip, I think there was a wreckage of a city back there. Maybe I'm wrong, but I decided that's what I was going to do. I was going to throw in these gags. So I threw in characters that destroy cities, and the Godzilla and the War of the Worlds tripod. But Ignatz from Crazy Cat is throwing a brick just because that's what he did in the Crazy Cat comic strip, and there were bricks lying around. So I figured, well, have him pick one up. That's it, you're just riffing when you're drawing these things. But the positioning of Daisy in that first panel and the two figures, that's a direct swipe homage from the original Flash Infantino page. And if the logo, or the title rather, the the caption with the little hand coming out, that's straight out of those Infantino stories. That's they used the little hand pointing to where you were supposed to go to next from the caption. That was a little device they used back in DC, or maybe Infantino did it. I'm not sure.
Well, it's a wonderful
program,
start
yeah.
to that story as far as the page goes. I love it, and so did Rich Donnelly. He claimed that one, and I can also say I saw another claim come in from Jim Manley for lot number 1. So thank you, Jim. I appreciate that.
Oh, that's Swamp Thing?
The Swamp Thing, yes.
All right. Well, very cool, Jim, and thank you, everyone. I mean, I really appreciate it. And it tickles me that you guys are into the stuff, and that's great. I couldn't be more pleased that there's interest in this work, and I have a feeling we'll do another one of these or something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we have a lot to talk about, but yeah, I think that no, this went really well. But let me recap for people who maybe weren't taking notes, which pieces are still available. I know a lot of people are, it's a Saturday afternoon, so a lot of people do watch these on the rewind. So if somebody is tuning into the show late, after the fact, watching it there, you can email me and I'll let you know if any of these pages that I'm going to go through right now are still available. Anybody who's claimed art, though, of course, remember, shoot me an email, bill@comicartfans.com. And we'll arrange payment. Andre's already paid me. I got a text message. He took care of me through Zelle, and he's picking them up in San Diego. So fantastic. That is another option. I mentioned at the beginning of the sale that I'm happy to deliver the art to San Diego for those of you who are going to be there and saving on shipping. So that's an option. But let me go ahead and run through the lots that are still available, and I'll do my best to keep an eye on the chat in case. So I'll see it right there. Andrew Hanna, before I even got started, picked up lot number 2, so I don't even have to show that one now. Thank you, Andrew. Sorry. All right.
Okay, go ahead, Bill. Go ahead.
Now I'll go through these. So let's see. Lot 6 was the first one. That was the SpongeBob page, priced at $150. It's on 11 by 17. Then we have lot number 8 is still available. That was the web from the second comic, and this is from issue 1, page 19, priced at $275. Lots 12, that was the cover to Black Flame Archives, issue 7. It's on 11 by 17, priced at $400. We also have lot number 13. This is from The Thing, issue 8, priced at $400. And lot 14 from Power Pack, still available. This is from issue 31, page 15, a little bit of Zipatone on it. This one's on 11 by 17 as well. And then we also have let's see, what was it? A lot 17 from Power Pack. This one's $450. Also penciled by John Bogdanov, and it's on 11 by 17 as well. Then looking down my list here, I think just one other page is still available. That was the Silvestri penciled Commando piece that you inked from the mini comic.
That's an odd one.
It is an odd one.
You ought to take that. If it doesn't sell, take it to San Diego and have Mark sign it. Then it'll be like all of a sudden selling for hotcakes.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah.
And if you do, say hi from Hilary.
All right. You know what? I have no problem doing that. That would be funny. I've had Mark didn't always sign his stuff. I actually own a Wolverine page and an Uncanny page that he hadn't signed, and I had to go to a show and get him to sign them. So I mean, it happens. Yeah. Oh man. Well, again, thank you everybody. Bill doesn't wait in lines. Marcus, come on, I wait in lines. I have no problem doing that. What else have I got to do when I'm in San Diego? But but trust me, everybody, Hilary and I sincerely appreciate your patronage today of the show. This was a lot of fun, and Hilary and I talked a lot in the lead up to this, so we weren't quite sure what to expect, but we really appreciate everybody picking up pieces. And again, we can't thank you enough. And those of you who claimed, remember, hit me with an email, bill@comicartfans.com. The sooner we get payment worked out and deliveries figured out, I can get these things in the mail before I leave for San Diego on Wednesday. So any last words, Hilary?
Well, again, thank you to Bill. Thanks for asking me on, and thanks to everyone. I mean, it's gratifying, and I'm happy that this went well. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody. I'm happy to talk comics anytime. If you ever want to have me on just to talk,
Oh yeah,
fun.
no, absolutely. I mean, it's always well, we're always talking comics and comic art one way or another. And I know you have, you were in the business a lot, and you got to work with a lot of creators that I'd love to hear more stories about. So yeah, just even the Ramona Fradon story. That was That's
I
golden,
mean,
right? And it's never, you're those are stories that get that happen in a little finite moment at a show,
yeah,
and they're so important for us to know that conversation happened.
and I got to say, just there aren't too many golden age people left, but there are silver age people out there. And if you're a fan of their work and they're at conventions, please tell them how much you appreciate their work. And if they're not doing well, consider giving money to the Hero Initiative or buying art from them. It's been wonderful that I could go to conventions during my life and meet Will Eisner, show him my work, show my work to Marvel editors and get work. But to connect to these previous generations of people whose work I collected and bought off the newsstand, and then I'm seeing them in the person and getting to look through their art or hear them talk to someone else and tell stories. Gil Kane, all these guys were around when I was still going to cons. It's kind of a magical thing. And I'm sure for people now, there's the next generations. Those are their golden age guys, the guys that were working at Image, say, or at Marvel in the 90s or the 80s. And this field is going through a lot. Publishing is tough, print is tough. And just I don't know, say hi to them, shake their hand, say thank you.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Right. You'll regret when you're not able to do that. That's so true. I mean, I'm with you 200%. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your weekend. And, if you're going to San Diego, and even if you didn't buy any artwork, say hi, because, I'll be around the whole art alley section and hanging out with probably Ramita Man and Albert Moy and Heritage's over there. So Kazra will be with me, so you can bring him a birthday card, a belated birthday card if you want.
Ask Albert if he was selling my work back in the day, because I think it was Albert. It's just been so long, I literally can't remember, but I assume it was him.
Right.
If you think
I will. We talk at least once every San Diego. I have to give him a hard time once or twice. But all right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your weekend. We'll see you. You won't see me for a week, but we'll be back at it the week after next. Take care.